They had been ready to fight and die to protect their home. Instead, they had won through the demonstration of overwhelming strength, combined with mercy. In the Lunar Command Center, Stone looked out at Earth through the observation window. The blue and green planet hung in space, beautiful and fragile, protected by the most sophisticated defensive network humanity had ever built. "Sir," Chen said, "do you think they will come back?" Stone considered the question. "Not the Krathen. They learned their lesson today. But others will test us eventually. Species that hear about our weapons will want to see if the reports are true. We must remain vigilant." He turned away from the window. "But for today, Colonel, we can rest knowing that humanity has announced its presence to the galaxy, not as conquerors, but as a power that will defend its territory at any cost." Part 3. A galaxy forever changed. The long journey home, the Krathen fleet limped back toward their empire, and Commander Vexler felt the weight of failure crushing him with each passing hour. The faster-than-light journey that had been filled with confidence and anticipation on the way to Earth now felt like a funeral march. Warriors who had boasted about their coming victories now sat in silence, replaying the impossible situation they had faced. In his private quarters, Vexler stared at the tactical recordings of the encounter. Over and over, he watched the moment when the human defensive network revealed itself, transforming his overwhelming advantage into complete helplessness in a matter of seconds. How had they done it? How had these supposedly primitive creatures built such sophisticated defenses without anyone in the galaxy knowing? Elder Scientist Moran entered without announcement, a liberty she had earned through decades of service. She looked older than Vexler had ever seen her, her scales dull with exhaustion. "Commander, we need to discuss what we will tell the High Council." Vexler laughed bitterly. "We will tell them the truth, Elder, that we ignored an ancient warning, underestimated a species we knew nothing about, and retreated without engaging the enemy. My military career is finished." Moran sat down across from him. "Commander, your military career may be finished, but your service to the Empire is not. What we learned at Earth is more valuable than any conquest." She activated her personal data device, displaying the analysis she had been compiling during the journey home. "I have been studying every piece of data we collected from the human system. Commander, the humans did not just build a defensive network. They revolutionized warfare itself." She showed him schematics of the Stellar Lance platforms. These weapons harness the power of their star directly. The energy requirements alone suggest technology decades, possibly centuries beyond our current capabilities. But that is not what concerns me most. Vexler looked up. "What concerns you, Elder?" Moran displayed images of the human command structure they had observed. "Their coordination, Commander. Thousands of separate installations, hundreds of ships, weapons platforms scattered across billions of kilometers, all working in perfect harmony. The level of communication and coordination required for such a network is extraordinary." She pulled up another file. "During our brief contact, I analyzed the human admiral's speech patterns and decision-making. Commander, he was not following a script or predetermined plan. He was adapting in real time to our reactions. That level of tactical flexibility, combined with such massive coordination, suggests an entire philosophy of warfare that we do not understand." Vexler studied the data with growing unease. "You think they have fought battles like this before?" "Against whom?" Moran shook her head. "Not against anyone, Commander. Against themselves. I have been studying their historical transmissions. Humans have been practicing for this exact scenario for their entire history. They have fought wars on their own planet that involved global coordination, millions of participants, and weapons of mass destruction." She showed him recordings of human historical conflicts. World War II, where millions of soldiers fought across entire continents. The Cold War, where two superpowers aimed nuclear weapons at each other for decades. Modern military exercises where humans practiced defending against invasion scenarios. "Commander, they have been preparing to fight us since before they even knew we existed. Not us specifically, but the concept of us. The idea that someday, something from the stars might threaten their world. The message spreads by the time the Krathen fleet reached their home system. News of their defeat had already spread across the Empire. Commander Vexler's humiliating retreat was broadcast on every communication channel. Some called him a coward. Others whispered that he had saved the Empire from certain destruction. The High Council summoned him immediately. Vexler stood in the center of the Great Council chamber, surrounded by the most powerful leaders of the Krathan Empire. High Commander Zarketh, supreme leader of their military forces, glared down at him from an elevated throne. Commander Vexler, you were sent to conquer a primitive species and expand our empire. Instead, you retreated without firing a single shot. Explain yourself. Vexler had prepared for this moment. He had spent the entire journey home deciding how to convey the truth of what they had faced. High Commander, members of the Council, I did not retreat from a battle we could have won. I retreated from a trap that would have destroyed our entire fleet. He activated a holographic display, showing the tactical situation they had encountered. The humans allowed us to enter their system. They monitored our approach and prepared a defensive network beyond anything in our military experience. The hologram showed the moment when the human defenses revealed themselves. Council members leaned forward, studying the display with growing concern. These are their stellar lance platforms, Vexler explained. Weapons that harness the power of their sun. Each one capable of destroying our entire fleet in less than a minute. They have 17 of them. Murmurs of disbelief spread through the Council. Supreme Science Advisor Krelliner stood up. Commander, such weapons are theoretically possible, but the energy requirements would be enormous. Are you certain you interpreted the data correctly? Elder Moran stepped forward. Supreme Advisor, I have personally analyzed all data collected during our encounter. The human weapons are exactly as Commander Vexler describes. Furthermore, their defensive network included over 2,000 military vessels, all using stealth technology superior to our own. She activated additional displays showing the sophistication of human technology. Honored Council, the humans are not a primitive species. They are a highly advanced military power that deliberately concealed their capabilities. Every piece of intelligence we gathered about them was information they chose to give us. High Commander Zarketh's expression darkened. Then our intelligence networks are compromised. How long have the humans been manipulating our information? Moran pulled up timeline data. Based on my analysis, they have been monitoring our empire for at least 5 years, possibly longer. They knew we were expanding in their direction. They studied our tactics and prepared specifically to counter them. Counselor Vekrin, leader of the expansion faction, spoke up. Even if all this is true, we cannot allow one species to dictate boundaries to the Krathan Empire. We should assemble a larger fleet and return with overwhelming force. Vexler felt anger flash through him. Counselor, with respect, you did not see what I saw. The humans were not bluffing. They demonstrated their weapons' power. They had us completely surrounded. If we had attacked, none of my warriors would have survived. He looked around the council chamber. But more importantly, the humans showed us mercy. They could have destroyed us the moment we entered their system. Instead, they gave us a chance to retreat with our lives. That is not the behavior of a species we can intimidate with larger numbers. Understanding the enemy, the debate in the council chamber continued for hours. Some counselors wanted revenge for the humiliation. Others argued for caution. Finally, High Commander Zarketh called for silence. Elder Moran, you have studied the humans more than anyone. In your professional opinion, what would happen if we sent a fleet of 3,000 ships to Earth instead of 300? Moran, consider a Treyak continue to halves the question carefully before answering. High Commander, I believe we would lose 3,000 ships instead of 300. The humans did not reveal their full capabilities to us. They showed us exactly enough to convince us to retreat. She activated a new analysis on the holographic display. Consider their behavior, High Commander. They tracked our fleet for weeks before we even knew they were watching. They allowed us to penetrate deep into their system before revealing themselves. This suggests confidence in their ability to destroy us at any point in that journey. Moran highlighted specific data points. Furthermore, Admiral Stone specifically mentioned that the weapon demonstration was at 1% power. If that is true, then the destruction we witnessed was merely a fraction of their capabilities. They were sending a message, not demonstrating their limits. Counselor Vekrin stood up again, his scales flushed red with anger. Elder, You speak as if these humans are gods. They are flesh and blood, like us. They can be defeated. Moran turned to face him directly. Counselor, I am not saying they are gods. I am saying they are something we have never encountered before. A species that has spent their entire existence preparing for extinction and refusing to accept it. She pulled up human historical data that she had been analyzing for weeks. Look at their history. Their planet has tried to kill them repeatedly. Ice ages lasting thousands of years. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out their sun. Asteroid impacts that destroyed most life on their world. Diseases that killed significant portions of their population. Each time they survived. Each time they adapted. Each time they became stronger. The holographic display showed images of human civilization rebuilding after disasters. Cities rising from ruins. Populations recovering from plagues. Technology advancing despite setbacks. This is a species that does not accept defeat as final, Moran continued. They have a saying, what does not kill us makes us stronger. It is not just words. It is their fundamental philosophy. General Croydon, who had accompanied Vexler on the mission, spoke up for the first time. High Commander, I must support Elder Moran's assessment. I have spent decades in military service. I have fought in dozens of campaigns against various species. The humans are different. He stood and approached the council. Most species we conquer, fight until their losses become unacceptable, then they surrender. It is rational behavior. But during our brief encounter with the humans, I studied their military doctrine through the data we intercepted. They do not fight based on acceptable losses. They fight based on strategic objectives. Croydon activated his own tactical analysis. High Commander, the humans have contingency plans for fighting, even if their homeworld is destroyed. They have protocols for continuing military operations from their colonies, from generation ships, even from scattered survivors in deep space. They plan for wars that might last centuries. The council chamber fell silent as this information sank in. Supreme Science Advisor Krelliner spoke quietly. You are describing a species that has accepted the possibility of their own extinction and decided to keep fighting anyway. Moran nodded. Exactly, Supreme Advisor. That is what makes them so dangerous. It is not their technology, though that is formidable. It is their psychology. They will not stop fighting until either they are completely extinct or their enemy is defeated. The ancient warning explained. High Commander Zarketh sat back in his throne, his forearms crossed in contemplation. For several minutes, he said nothing, processing everything he had heard. Finally, he spoke. Elder Moran, you studied the ancient warning beacon. Why do you think the precursors specifically named humans as forbidden? Moran had been waiting for this question. She had spent weeks forming her theory, and now she would share it with the council. High Commander, I believe the precursors encountered humanity at some point in their history. Not the current human civilization, but an earlier version. Perhaps millions of years ago, when the precursors were still active in the galaxy, she displayed her analysis of the warning beacon's message. The specific wording is important. The beacon did not say humans were powerful or technologically advanced. It said they were impossible to fully defeat and that they do not surrender. The precursors were warning about human psychology, not human weapons. Moran pulled up comparative data. I have studied every known precursor warning beacon in our historical databases. Most warn about environmental hazards, dangerous phenomena, or unstable regions of space. Only 3 warn about specific species. Humans are the only species the precursors described as marked as protected. Counselor Dextar, the eldest member of the council, leaned forward with interest. Protected by whom, Elder? The precursors are gone, Moran shook her head. I do not know, Counselor. But I believe the precursors were not protecting humans from us. They were protecting us from humans. The statement caused an uproar in the council chamber. Several counselors shouted objections. How could one species require protection from another? But Moran raised her voice over the chaos. Think about it, honored council. The precursors ruled the galaxy for millions of years. They had technology beyond our comprehension. If they feared humans enough to leave a permanent warning, what does that tell us? She let the question hang in the air. I believe the precursors encountered early humans and recognized something in them that worried even a civilization as powerful as theirs. The capacity for endless adaptation, the refusal to accept defeat, the willingness to sacrifice everything rather than submit to conquest. Vexler spoke up, supporting Moran's theory. High Commander, during our encounter, the human admiral told me something that supports Elder Moran's analysis. He said humans are not conquerors, they are defenders. He said military strength is not about how many enemies you can destroy, but how many you can convince not to fight you. The commander looked around the council chamber. That statement reveals their strategic thinking. They built overwhelming military power not to conquer others, but to make conquest of their world impossible. The precursors must have recognized this same pattern. High Commander Zarkith stood up, silencing the chamber with his presence. Council members, we face a decision that will shape the future of our empire. We can continue our expansion in other directions and leave human space alone. Or we can commit to a war against an enemy that may be impossible to defeat. He walked to the center of the chamber, near where Vexler stood. Commander Vexler, if I ordered you to take a fleet of 10,000 ships and conquer Earth, could you do it? Vexler met his commander's eyes without hesitation. No, High Commander, I could not. Such a fleet might win initial battles, but the humans would continue fighting from their colonies, their space stations, their hidden installations. They would rebuild and strike back. The war would last for decades, possibly centuries. It would drain our empire's resources and possibly destroy us even if we achieved temporary victory. A new path forward, High Commander Zarkith returned to his throne and made his decision. Council, I hereby declare human space forbidden territory for the Krathan Empire. No military vessels will enter their region. No expansion efforts will target their worlds. We will respect the ancient warning that we should have heeded in the first place. Counselor Vekran jumped to his feet. High Commander, this is unacceptable. We cannot allow fear to dictate our empire's future. Zarkith's eyes flashed with anger. It is not fear, Counselor. It is wisdom. The same wisdom the precursors tried to give us millions of years ago. He gestured to the holographic displays still showing human defensive capabilities. Our empire has grown powerful by conquering species weaker than ourselves. We have never faced an opponent like humanity. An opponent that welcomes sacrifice, that plans for extinction-level events, that treats total war as an acceptable option. The High Commander's voice grew stern. If we fight humans, even if we win, we will be weakened. Other empires in the galaxy will see our losses and attack us. Our entire civilization could collapse because we insisted on conquering one system that was never worth the cost. He looked at each council member in turn. Furthermore, the humans demonstrated something important. They showed us mercy when they could have destroyed us. That is the mark of a civilization that understands power must be tempered with wisdom. Perhaps we should learn from them rather than fight them. Counselor Vekran sat down, defeated. The rest of the council murmured agreement. The decision was made. Elder Moran felt relief wash over her. The Empire had finally listened to wisdom instead of pride. High Commander Zarkith turned to Vexler. Commander, you are relieved of your military command, but I am appointing you as our first ambassador to human space. You will return to Earth and negotiate a formal treaty establishing boundaries and communication protocols. Vexler was stunned. High Commander, I am honored, but why me? I led our fleet to defeat. Zarkith smiled slightly. Exactly. You have seen their power firsthand. You understand what they are capable of. You will negotiate from a position of respect rather than arrogance. That is what we need now. The treaty 6 months later, former Commander Vexler stood in a diplomatic station orbiting Earth's moon. The station had been built jointly by humans and Krathan, a symbol of their new relationship. Across the negotiating table sat Admiral Marcus Stone, who had set aside his military duties to lead the human diplomatic effort. The two leaders had spent weeks negotiating the treaty that would define the relationship between their species. Vexler had learned much about humans during this time. He had discovered that beneath their military strength lay a culture rich with art, music, literature, and philosophy. They were not just warriors, they were explorers, scientists, dreamers, and poets. Ambassador Vexler Stone said, using the Krathen's new title, "I believe we have reached an agreement that both our peoples can accept." Vexler reviewed the treaty terms on his datapad. The Krathen Empire would recognize human territorial boundaries. Both species would establish formal diplomatic relations. Trade would be permitted with mutual agreement. Most importantly, both sides committed to peaceful resolution of any future disputes. Admiral Stone, this treaty is fair and generous. More generous than we deserve after attempting to invade your world? Stone shook his head. Ambassador, we do not judge entire civilizations by single mistakes. Your empire made an error in judgment. You acknowledged that error and withdrew without unnecessary bloodshed. That deserves respect. He stood and walked to the observation window, looking out at Earth. Besides, humans understand the temptation of conquest. Our own history is filled with empires that rose and fell based on that same temptation. We learned eventually that cooperation builds stronger civilizations than conquest. Vexler joined him at the window. Admiral, may I ask you a question that has troubled me since our first encounter? Stone nodded. Of course. Why did you show us mercy? You could have destroyed our fleet and sent a much stronger message to the galaxy. Instead, you let us leave. Why? Stone was quiet for a moment before answering. Ambassador, there is an old human saying, it is easy to start a war, but difficult to end one. If we had destroyed your fleet, we would have created martyrs. Your empire would have been forced to respond to save face. We would have been locked into a conflict that might have lasted generations. He turned to face Vexler directly. By showing mercy, we demonstrated that we are strong enough to choose peace, even when we could choose war. That is a much more powerful message than simple destruction. Vexler nodded slowly, understanding. The precursors were right about your species. You are dangerous, but not in the way most species are dangerous. Stone smiled. We prefer to think of ourselves as cautious, Ambassador. We have learned through hard experience that the strongest fortresses are built on foundations of mutual respect rather than fear. Treaty was signed the next day in a ceremony broadcast across both civilizations. Representatives from other galactic species attended as observers, watching humanity officially announce its presence on the interstellar stage. As news of the treaty spread, the galaxy reacted with a mixture of caution and curiosity. Some species saw Earth as a potential ally against aggressive empires. Others viewed humanity as a threat to be monitored carefully. But all of them understood one crucial fact. The ancient warning about humanity had been correct. They were not a species to be conquered, the legacy one year after the treaty signing. Elder scientist Moran stood in the newly established Krathen embassy on Earth's moon. She had volunteered to serve as the chief science liaison between the two civilizations, fascinated by the opportunity to study human culture and technology up close. A human scientist named Dr. Sarah Mitchell worked alongside her, conducting joint research into technologies that might benefit both species. The two had become friends despite their different backgrounds. Elder Moran, Dr. Mitchell said, looking up from her research terminal. I have been studying the data you shared about the precursor warning beacon. I think I understand why they were so concerned about humanity. Moran's scales brightened with interest. Please, share your thoughts, Doctor. Dr. Mitchell pulled up a holographic display showing human evolutionary history. Every species evolves based on the challenges they face. Most intelligent species evolved on relatively stable worlds where cooperation was the key to survival. But Earth was different. She highlighted various extinction events in Earth's geological history. Our planet repeatedly tried to kill everything living on it. Ice ages, asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, climate shifts. Any species that survived on Earth had to be adaptable, resilient, and absolutely determined to survive. Moran studied the data with fascination. You are saying your entire species was shaped by constant survival pressure. Dr. Mitchell nodded. Exactly. For millions of years, our ancestors faced extinction repeatedly. The ones who survived were the ones who refused to give up, who adapted to impossible conditions, who worked together despite differences. That survival instinct became hardwired into our psychology. She pulled up more recent human history. Even in the modern era, we carried that instinct forward. Every human child grows up hearing stories about survival against impossible odds. Our entertainment is filled with scenarios where humanity faces extinction and finds a way to survive. We cannot help ourselves. Survival is literally in our DNA. Moran felt a chill run through her body. Doctor, you are describing a species that evolved specifically to be impossible to eliminate. The precursors must have recognized this trait and understood its implications. Dr. Mitchell smiled sadly. Yes, they understood that any species that tried to conquer humanity would face an enemy that would never surrender, never stop fighting, never accept defeat as final. We are not aggressive by nature, but we are absolutely relentless when threatened. Moran looked out at Earth through the observation window. Your species should terrify the galaxy, Doctor. Yet you build treaties instead of empires. You offer cooperation instead of conquest. Why? Dr. Mitchell joined her at the window. Because we learned something important from our history, Elder. Survival is not enough. We want to thrive, not just survive. And we cannot thrive alone. We need allies, friends, partners in exploring the universe. She gestured to the research they had been conducting together. Think about what we have accomplished in just 1 year of cooperation. Krathan engineering expertise, combined with human adaptability, your species' mathematical precision, combined with our creative problem-solving, together we have made breakthroughs that neither species could have achieved alone. Moran felt something shift in her understanding. You are saying that humanity's greatest strength is not your military power or your refusal to surrender. Dr. Mitchell nodded. Our greatest strength is our ability to turn enemies into friends, to build cooperation out of conflict, to choose peace even when we have the power to wage war. A galaxy transformed 5 years after the first Krathan encounter. The Sol system had become a hub of diplomatic and scientific activity. Over 20 different species had established embassies in the neutral diplomatic zone around Earth's moon. Some came seeking protection against aggressive empires. Others came hoping to learn from human defensive technologies. All of them came with respect for the species that had honored the ancient warning. Admiral Marcus Stone, now retired from active military service, served as Earth's ambassador to the galactic community. He stood in the main hall of the Galactic Council station addressing representatives from across known space. Members of the Council, humanity comes before you, not as conquerors, but as partners. We have no interest in dominating others or building an empire. Our only goal is to protect our home and help build a galaxy where all species can thrive without fear of aggression. A representative from the Valaxian Collective, a species that had been victims of Krathan expansion, spoke up. Ambassador Stone, your species possesses weapons capable of destroying entire fleets. How can we trust that you will not use this power to dominate others? Stone nodded, acknowledging the concern. A fair question, Representative. Let me answer by showing you something. He activated a holographic display showing Earth's defensive network. These are our stellar lance platforms. Weapons capable of tremendous destruction, but notice their positioning. He highlighted specific details. Every single platform is positioned to defend our system, not to project power outward. Their effective range barely extends beyond our territorial boundaries. They are fortress weapons, not conquest weapons. He showed comparative data. If we wanted to build an aggressive empire, we would have designed mobile weapons platforms, carrier fleets, invasion forces. Instead, we built static defenses and rapid response ships. Our entire military doctrine is based on defense, not offense. Ambassador Vexler, representing the Krathan Empire, stood to support Stone's statement. Members of the Council, I can personally testify to humanity's defensive philosophy. When my fleet entered their system with hostile intent, they could have destroyed us instantly. Instead, they gave us multiple opportunities to withdraw peacefully. He looked around the chamber. Furthermore, in the 5 years since our treaty, humans have not expanded militarily into a single system beyond their own. They have sent exploration vessels, science missions, and diplomatic envoys. But they have not claimed any territory or established military outposts. Their actions match their words. The representative from the Thalkar Dominion, a powerful military empire, spoke skeptically. But surely they are building more weapons, more ships, preparing for future expansion. Dr. Mitchell, attending as part of the human delegation, addressed this concern. Representative, you are correct that we continue to develop new technologies. But I invite you to review our published research. Over 60% of our advanced research is now focused on medical technology. We got environmental restoration and peaceful exploration. She displayed human research priorities. We are developing faster-than-light drives that do not damage subspace. Medical treatments that work across multiple species biology. Agricultural techniques that can feed populations on harsh worlds. This is where our energy and resources are directed, Stone added. We learned from our own history that military power alone does not build lasting civilizations. Only cooperation, trade, scientific advancement, and mutual respect can do that. It's the new era.